I would say the more typical instance of financial elder abuse is the one-offs, where someone calls your home and pretends to be a police officer in a different state and makes a claim about your grandchild being hurt and asking for money to be sent. And those happen all the time.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. Not Born Yesterday is about playing, working, loving, laughing, and enjoying the possibilities and opportunities of later years. I'm Miriam Goodman, your co-host. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible. Along the way, we hope you will share your thoughts and concerns about being older and let us know how we can help.
Hello, I'm your co-host, Lynn Winter-Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF. Next Village SF is a local nonprofit providing older adults in the Northeast neighborhood of San Francisco with support to help age in place, as well as offering cultural, educational, and social activities that keep people connected and engaged with the community and with each other.
Today we want to talk about an issue that is unpleasant but necessary: elder abuse. Elder abuse may not be something you are experiencing yourself, but 10% of elders in this country have been victims of this specific type of abuse. The technical definition is mistreatment or harm to an older person, including physical, emotional, sexual, and financial exploitation. This kind of abuse has lasting effect on victims, and unfortunately, most of it goes unrecognized and unreported. Social isolation, especially now due to the pandemic, has given rise to even more such abuse, but it's been around for a long time and is in every subculture. Elder abuse has major financial and moral costs for society, and public solutions may require institutional as well as individual solutions like neighbors checking in on older neighbors. Here to give us some insight into the real problem is attorney Michael Bolgatz. Michael is a former general counsel for a national security brokerage in San Francisco. He's also worked as an attorney suing stockbrokers for financial elder abuse. Currently, he's an investor advocate for a wealth management firm. Michael, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Michael, can you describe some different kinds of elder abuse?
So in general sense, there's a few different flavors. As you described in your opening, there is the physical elder abuse, which has tangible effects and is typically very recognized on the body. Then there's the financial elder abuse, which has a few different types of flavors, if you will. There are, I would say, the more typical instance of financial elder abuse is the one-offs, where someone calls your home and pretends to be a police officer in a different state and makes a claim about your grandchild being hurt and asking for money to be sent. And those happen all the time. And that is under the radar, where the person who's the victim doesn't want to tell anyone because they've been defrauded of $50,000. They feel like a fool. So they don't communicate that. So that's the kind of hand-to-hand elder abuse. Then there's the kind of the bigger one that's an ongoing one, where individuals get themselves in situations where they've aligned themselves with somebody who's committing a fraud, and an ongoing fraud, where they're sending them money for purported to be for an investment, and the investment isn't there. So that's kind of the long-term fraud. In the second example, where it's the hand-to-hand one, I've seen instances where people ingratiate themselves with people, and a lot of times these people, as you described early on, are isolated and lonely, and they like the attention and get themselves involved with somebody. And that one is much more difficult because the ready symptoms of the abuse aren't there, because it works in tandem with the consent. So let's say I'm sending you $50,000 regularly out of my checking account. Who's going to catch me? How is somebody going to figure out that I'm doing that? Is it your bank teller at Wells Fargo? Not in San Francisco. No one really has that personal relationship. A mandatory reporter, that is a mandatory reporter, but they won't really understand the implications of what you're doing because they'll just see money going out. And imagine the scenario where someone at your bank teller comes up to you and says, "Why are you doing that? We're going to shut your account down because you're sending money to this individual." They can't really do that absent a court order.
How does it happen that you're all of a sudden sending $50,000 to somebody you don't know?
Well, so in the situation where like the grandmother gets called, they'll say, "Oh, your grandson's been in an accident." And it's a great question. And they'll get them to a position where they won't tell anyone else that they're doing it. So the isolation aspect is so material in that. And I'll tell you, it was a really interesting article in the New York Times Magazine. I don't know if you guys saw it, on the 18th of August by Kim Tingley. And what they said that if you have fewer than 6 confidants, you are socially isolated. And I'll tell you, the fact that people don't have confidants out there is the genesis of all these problems, where someone gets a call, they don't think to call their child to find out what happened, or they get, "Hey, you can make all this money doing this." They don't run it past their CPA. So these people, through isolation, become victims, and it's kind of under the radar.
I have a friend who's in her late 80s, and she said just a few weeks ago she picked up the phone and somebody says, "Grandma." She doesn't have any young grandchildren. So, it was the beginning of the same kind of thing. And she said she felt like she wanted to play along with it just to hear what the person was going to say. And she realized, no, I'm not going to do it. And so she hung up. But it happens all the time.
And it's a very powerful draw because, that scenario can be where someone says, "Your grandchild," and they say, "Adam?"
Oh.
And they say, "Yes, Adam," and then you're kind of roped in. And Adam asked that we call you and not tell your parents. And the person, out of love, it's the very emotion that drives us towards our family is kind of something that is used against us.
Well, I guess you sort of answered this, but how does one really identify elder abuse? I mean, can you go into somebody's house and you can't go check, unless it's your parent or your child who will let you do it, you can't check their bank account. You can't see if they're paying their bills. You can't see, if things have been taken by a caregiver or something. How do you identify it?
It's a great question. Unless you have access, right? And part of what I think is important for your listeners to keep in mind is there's these potentially proactive steps you can take. So, for instance, you could give a trusted third party, your child or whomever, a durable power of attorney. And that durable power of attorney will enable them to actually get access to your accounts. So you can do a check to see what's going on. But other than that, it's very difficult to know what's going on and almost impossible. And the mandatory reporters are kind of in a very weakened situation because unless they actually know something, they can't really report it.
So if a doctor is seeing you for something else but notices bruises or broken bones or I read someplace signs of restraint, that doctor is obligated to report it?
100% within 2 hours.
Wow.
But that's a very isolated, unique situation. And the doctor reports that I understand you have to be under the care and custody. So it's really more in like a nursing home situation where these have come up, where someone does show signs of being neglected within the nursing home setting. And mandatory reporter, bam,
So we've heard a lot over this last couple of years about nursing home and neglect and not having adequate care.
Yes, exactly. And that falls right into the strike zone of physical elder abuse in California. And just to give you a sense of it, for financial and physical, the law is that you get what's called treble damages. So if there's a monetary loss and you've gotten $1 million taken from you, potentially you can sue for $3 million and also get your attorney's fees paid. The problem with that scenario is, where's the money? If it's a caretaker that's been taking your money, more likely than not, they've spent it.
So we've heard a lot over the last year about nursing homes and residents not having adequate care. What's a family member to do?
In that situation, it's pretty clear. If there is a care concern in a nursing home, it's a 100% reportable event. Social services would get very interested and very involved in that. And the doctor is a mandatory reporter, and so is nurse practitioners. So if there's any evidence of that and they didn't report it, they're in big trouble.
What are the remedies for elder abuse?
Yeah, and elder abuse in California has a component of treble damages, which means if there's an out-of-pocket loss, that would be tripled as part of your claim, as well as attorney's fees. So it's very powerful in terms of monetary incentive to sue. The problem is that in a lot of these situations, the money's gone. So not in a situation where you're suing a nursing home that has plenty of insurance, but in the one-off situation where someone steals money from an individual, or in the bigger fraud scenarios, a lot of times people will file bankruptcy or the money will disappear. So there's great remedies, except there's no meaningful resolution out there for the lawyer.
So how do we prevent this? How do we educate the public to be on the lookout for this?
Well, there's a couple things that I think people can do. I think people need to be mindful that it's out there. And I think people who are at home need to be very cautious when they're giving anything out about their finances on the phone.
In your experience, is the reason elders are most vulnerable is because they have assets, or is it because they have dementia and are not making sound decisions anymore?
They do have assets, and that's why people are going after them, for sure, 100%. If there's signs of dementia, then you have other legal remedies that would unfortunately impact their ability to make their own types of choices moving forward. So if people are actually incompetent legally under the law, which is a very kind of high standard to reach, then you can put safeguards in place. So that's a way of kind of preventing it, but it's also a difficult process because people typically will exhibit some degrees of dementia and some, concerning behavior, but not 100% of the time. I also wanted to mention a couple other things if I could.
Sure.
So there's a couple really great things in the California probate code. A lot of times people, I've seen situations where people will try to give what's called a donative gift to an individual who's a caretaker. And family members will be very alarmed by that naturally because this person has gotten into a position of trust with this individual, and then all of a sudden they want to leave them their home. In California probate code, there's actually some pretty great, the California legislature has really done a fantastic job on this. And it's under probate code 21380. And if you're a care custodian, you actually can't get a donative gift from the person you're taking care of, absent a letter from a doctor saying that you have capacity to do that. And so there's a few hoops out there. So it's kind of a nice safety blanket.
You mentioned earlier a scam where someone calls and says your grandchild's been in an accident, things like that. I've also heard about ones that people call and say, we're from your computer company, and we need to get into your you have to share your information with us because we need to get into it. Otherwise, everything will be frozen and you'll lose your computer. And I know somebody that happened to, and the person took all the money out of all the bank accounts that were on that he used to pay by computer. And Other times somebody will call and say they're from the bank, and by mistake some money was put into your account. And could you send some money here to this account so it cancels out? And the red flag is that they want a gift card, not a credit card or not a check. Has that been pretty common?
Without a doubt, 100%. I've had, family members that have had, been duped or swindled out of that. And yes, I would say probably everyone has gotten some type of inquiry around that. And if you're somehow predisposed, it'll happen. And so, yeah, it's a very tragic event. And if people do find out about that later, call the police. And you would think, oh, it's not $50 million. It's not Bernie Madoff. The police aren't going to be. But you need to report these things so that there's some ability for law enforcement to understand the problem.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for talking about this tough subject with us today. That was attorney Michael Bolgatz.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the final message today is one you have heard before. If you see something, say something. If you or someone you know may be a victim of elder abuse, call your local Adult Protective Services hotline. Most are open 24 hours a day.
As listeners may have noticed, we like to give some action items in each episode of Not Born Yesterday. Today we want to remind you that it's never too late to learn something new. Whether you loved or hated school, now is a great time to learn about things you wish you had studied before, such as the stock market or an entirely new subject, maybe the history of opera or subjects that are of interest, World War II that you've studied before. Taking a class even online can add years to your life because just like your heart, your brain needs to be exercised in order to stay healthy. Lifelong learning is a term that has recently been added to the retirement lexicon. Learning is play, now that there are no exams and no homework for you to worry about. The lifelong, extended, and continuing education labels refer to courses that are offered at colleges and universities for students who aren't necessarily looking for credits but want to continue their education.
After all, boomers are probably the best educated generation in history, and we've been brought up to value learning. While we may have vowed never to take another course once we earned our degree, we still have interest in many things and years of brain activity ahead of us. Check your local centers of higher education and libraries for the most up-to-date listings of continuing education near you. That's our podcast for today. Our thanks to Michael Bolgatz for explaining elder abuse. You can learn more about Next Village SF by going to their website, www.nextvillagesf.org. And thanks to you for listening. We would love to hear what you would like to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast@nextvillagesf.org.
Be well, stay strong, and keep thinking about tomorrow. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.